Hello, and welcome back to another episode of This Round is on Me. I'm extra excited about this episode today because my guest is renowned Mumbai based chef and restaurateur Rahul Akerkar. He was among the first Indian chefs working outside the Indian five-star hotel industry to introduce independent fine dining restaurants in India and focus on carefully sourced ingredients and really high quality service. He successfully launched his first European fine dining restaurant, Indigo, back in 99. We'll be talking to Rahul about everything he did in the world of F&B before and after the iconic Indigo, right after this quick break.
Hi, hello everyone. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Akash and Noel discuss a Kerala movie theatre creating soundproof crying room for parents with babies. On the Filter Coffee Podcast, Karthik talks to Ajay Pratap Singh, CEO of Sports Kida. They talk about sports writing and the emotional connect sports have in India. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam talks to Shruti Jain, Chief Strategic Officer and Sustainable Influencer at Arihant Capital. They talk about socially responsible investing, or SRI, and the history of smart and sustainable investing. On the Advertiser's Guide to the Galaxy, Karthik Srinivasan explores the unethical LinkedIn tactic in Monster's rebranding announcement. And on Explain Like I'm 10, Meghnad welcomes Ashish Singhal, founder and CEO of CoinSwitch, and Urjita Vani, stand-up comedian and writer, to discuss whether cryptocurrencies are here to stay. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcasts.com. We have some exciting stuff for you. Follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, spread the word. Tell your friends and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. You'll also find all our shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week, Kotak Privy League Program and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible.
Welcome to the show, Rahul. It's
Hey.
so great to have you here, and thank you for making the time.
Yep.
Look, I think it's fair to say that you're the one restaurateur that many of us, look up to and aspire to achieve the success that you did with Indigo. And I honestly don't think, and I'm not saying this because you're here, but I don't think any restaurant in this city has achieved that level of iconic, status that, as you even heard outside, where you bump into someone and they're like, "Are you that Rahul Akerkar? And where is, what are you doing and why are you not feeding us?" Right? So, it is iconic on so many levels, and even though we have our restaurant now next door, it's something that memory will never ever go. Uh, that's no mean feat, and we'll talk a lot more about that whole journey later. But first, how did you go from biochemical engineering to cooking?
That's a that's a good question. Anyway, firstly, thanks for having me on the show. This is fun. How I went from bioengineering to cooking, it was actually kind of need based. I was in the US in college and short of cash, and I wound up working in restaurants. It started first in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster, where I was at Franklin Marshall College, and there was a restaurant there called Jethro's, which made the best martinis in town. And one summer school, at the end of class, we would go there and drink martinis 3 times a week or so. And at the end of the summer, I was broke. I turned to the owner, Ed, and I said, if you want me to keep coming in here to spend my money, you're going to have to give me a job so I can earn some. And that's how it started. I started cooking. I started to learn. Every place I went, I learned a little more. Then I went on to New York, to Columbia, did a second bachelor's, a master's, and then 2 years to my PhD. But I continued cooking at nights. And it helped pay my way through school. And I basically lost interest in academia, and I dropped out. And did a whole bunch of crazy things for a while. Sold Indian silver jewelry at flea markets and got into some real estate development. But the only constant was working in restaurants. And so I just decided to stick with it.
As far as I understand, you never really worked for anyone in India before you launched your first, you got into the business yourself.
That's correct.
And you started, in fact, with, I know you did the catering from home, but you started with Just Desserts with
Yeah,
AD. Was that
yeah.
the first?
Actually, I started catering first,
Right.
and then AD reached out when he was setting up Just Desserts and said, let's work together, and so we did that for a while. Before I then started Under the Over.
Right. And I actually remember when I was like this pimple faced teenager, and my sister took me to Just Desserts after dinner one night, and I was just like, oh my God. It was my first sort of going out experience without my parents. And I will never forget Just Desserts just for that reason. I don't remember the desserts that I ate, but it's funny how restaurants, get ingrained in our memories for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, and I know that we sort of did something similar by launching into the business without any work experience, at least in India. And it's funny because I had AD on the show 2 years ago, and I asked him this question. I said that, would you advise people to do it this way, or should they sort of get work experience in this country before they delve into the business side of it? Would you have done anything differently?
One was, I think, the timing was right. When I entered the market, it was still kind of a mom and pop operation. Where the kind of sat at the gala and counted the cash,
Yeah.
and the cooks were bawarchis in the
Mm.
kitchen. Like a sweatshop and that kind of thing. There were no independent chef restaurateurs, and I think the first to do that, and but it was right place at the right time. I think had things happened earlier, I don't think it would have been. I don't think Under the Over would have worked. I don't think Just Desserts would have worked. I don't think Indigo certainly wouldn't have worked if we were maybe 2 or 3 years earlier. I also think there's a sense of timing for all these things, when they happen. And I think I was lucky. But from a business point of view, from setting up the restaurant and making a go of it, I'm really glad it happened the way I did, because I think if I had had experience in India working here first, I probably would have been so disillusioned that I don't
You would have done it.
I don't think I would have done it. And it was like really funny because I didn't know the first thing about business. I didn't know how to read a balance sheet. In fact, I still probably don't know how to read one. But so I was sitting with the people at the loan department at Saraswat Cooperative Bank and at Syndicate Bank, who were the people who helped finance Indigo. And we were talking about all the financials of a restaurant, and it was a learning for them. It was a learning for me, and it kind of went hand in hand.
Yeah. And in fact, Under the Over was right near home, and I again remember dining. I remember the space very, very clearly. And again, it was a cool new restaurant. I think that's happened with so many, that they were the first of their kind in the city, and there was always this, you know, there was this pioneering approach to everything that you did, because it was the first for their city, in terms of the concept. What happened, when did you graduate from Under the Over to thinking that I want to go into that iconic, huge bungalow in the heart of
Yeah.
South Bombay, Colaba, madness, frankly?
Well, I think, Gauri, everything was a sort of a stepping stone on what I did previously. I mean, I had worked in the States for 10 years in restaurants in New York while I was in school over there. And it was time for me to do my own thing. I was tired of being an employee. So, when I came here and I started first doing Under the Over, actually first Just Desserts and then Under the Over and such, it was all a progression, right? I mean, each time it got a little more
Bigger.
involved. But it was very interesting because Under the Over to me was I used to work at this restaurant in New York called the Saloon at just opposite Lincoln Center, and it was one of those eating local, cooking global kind of places, and that's loosely what I modeled Under the Over on. And that was great for 3 5 years. I wish I could set up restaurants today for the same price that I did there. I think we spent 16 lakhs
You're
opening
kidding.
Under the Over. Yeah,
When was this? So this was 90 what?
92,
92.
the year I got married. Yeah. So I mean, it was nuts. We were. There was a friend of mine who used to paint as a hobby, Sunil Vijayakar, who had these sort of Matisse-looking works that he did. So we took them and we made table mats out of them. I got him to paint the walls in the restaurant. So it was all
Crowdsourced.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically, right. And we put up this restaurant. It was great, but the switch happened. So really, I think I owe a lot of it to probably to Protima Bedi. Um, when Under the Over, the lease was coming to an end. This was in '95, and the landlord there just was making it impossible to continue. He wanted to raise the rent. He wanted to come in as a partner. He wanted this, wanted that. So I just said, you know what, basta.
Hmm.
I'm going to close it. You can have the keys. You can have the place. So he said, I'll buy the business from you. I said, be my guest. So he did. And in the meantime, Protima, who had just set up Kutira Retreat, which is this sort of 10-acre, 10-room yoga, spiritual kind of retreat across the road from her dance village, Nityagram, outside Bangalore, and said, Rahul, this is perfect for you and Malini to come run, set it up and run. And we were tired at that point. We were closing Under the Over. I didn't know what I was going to do next. We had our daughter Shan was like
A baby.
a year and a half or something. My mom, bless her, said, I love the idea of being a grandmother, but I want to visit my grandkids, not have them live with me. It's a very typical American way
It
of doing
sounds
things.
a little familiar.
Yeah, and so basically it was like, get the hell out of the house now, go fend for yourself. And it seemed, I mean, this opportunity to go to Bangalore just landed in our laps, and so we went. And that to me was the most amazing learning experience, because here was a woman who, no sense of business, no sense of anything other than pure passion for what she wanted to do. She sold everything, her flat, her this, begged, borrowed, stole from people, went, got money from Karnataka State Finance Corporation, did all these things and put up this amazing hotel, retreat, resort, whatever you want to call it, yeah? And which we set up and ran for her. And so I was very closely involved with her, going to Karnataka State Finance Corporation, just doing all these sort of bean counter things, right, with her. And I really learned that, I don't come from a business background. Both of my parents worked in business environments, right, or jobs. And, I was always daunted by big numbers, lakhs and crores and stuff like this. For me, it was, thousands and tens of thousands. And what I learned from Protima is that it's just numbers on a page. If you really believe in what you want to do, and you have the ability to do it. I'm not saying the means, because that's a different thing, but if you have the ability and the know-how, you can do it. Whether it's got 6 zeros after it or 5 zeros, yes, the risk, and
Sure.
and the consequences change. But it really, for the first time, taught me that it's okay to just think a little larger, and that's really how. And also combined with the fact that over the time there, I felt I was getting very complacent in what I was doing, and I needed to reinvent what I was doing food wise. And so, I knew I wanted to do a sort of restaurant in the sense of what makes restaurants great. The attention to detail and all the proper cooking and warm, gracious hospitality and all of these things.
So you
And
weren't doing the food at the retreat?
yes, I was.
Oh, you were doing the food and you
I
were helping
was-
her basically run it.
We ran it. I was the accountant. I was the electrician. I was the cook. I was the manager. I was everything.
And how long was that for?
2 years.
And then you felt like you were ready to maybe take the plunge and come back to.
Well, it was interesting. I got tired of being a gentleman farmer living 40 kilometers outside Bangalore in Hesaraghatta. And we had to drive every day. Shan was just starting kindergarten, so it was like 40 kilometers in, 40 kilometers back. It was a nightmare from a logistics
Sure.
point of view. And so we decided, okay, enough. My contract with her came to an end. It was 2 years. And then we thought we'd make our life in Bangalore. It was the fastest growing city in Asia at the time, and everything looked good. Until a very dear friend of ours, Milind Thakkar, and myself, we were talking one evening about the difference between Bangalore and Bombay back in the day. And it's like prime real estate in Bombay was maybe $150 a square foot to rent, and Bangalore was 50. So the
Right.
differential was about $100, right? Which on a roughly 3,000 square foot place is 3 lakhs, a month, which
It's significant.
which if you break it down is about 10,000 rupees a day. And this is all his quick back of the napkin assessment, right? Analysis. So it's 10,000 rupees a day, roughly split between lunch and dinner is 5,000, 5,000. For give or take a 100-seater restaurant, that's $50 a head, which is roughly the price of a Coke. Can you extract one Coca-Cola more out of your customers in Bombay than Bangalore? The answer was yes. We packed up and moved in 2 weeks.
Wow.
It was as simple as
It
that.
was as complicated.
It was as
that.
complicated. That was as simple as that. I mean, it was just.
That is crazy.
It's insane, but it's really what happened.
Okay, but listen, the space that you decided then to apply that math to.
No. So we didn't have a place. We had funds. I had people who were interested in investing in us. So we had accumulated some funds. My parents, her parents, Malu's parents. We had some other friends from the US who had put money in. So we had funds. They were in the bank. At least.
So you had people who were willing to take that punt, even though you didn't necessarily have all your ducks in a row as far as the.
Absolutely.
Wow, that is amazing.
It was luck, I guess. So we started the whole process of trying to find a place in Bombay. And, we were very clear that these were the days when, I forget what it was, but, where this whole black money, white money thing was at its peak.
Right.
And there were, people were being arrested and people, had to, I forget what it was, but...
Launder?
There were there were people who could no longer sort of do deals in black, and the government was cracking down and like all this stuff. So we were very clear that places that we saw had to have we had about 6 or 8 questions that our lawyers had done about the title of the place.
Okay.
And so we saw tons of beautiful spaces, but in one case the properties, properties attached to the court, to the courts.
So
He's
disputed
in litigation,
and
and some people wanted half cash and half check, and all, so no, so we couldn't do any of that. And so we looked for a better part of a year and found nothing. That was a nice space with gravitas, right? I mean, I didn't want just a box. And towards the end of that year, around the fall, September, October, sometime then.
So this is now 90.
No, this is we opened Indigo in. Christ, when did we open?
99,
Indigo?
right?
99. Thank you.
Yeah.
We started. So this is about 97. We were just finishing Bangalore. We had come to Bombay. And Malu's sister gets married. And so we went. So they're getting married. We went to San Francisco, and so we were there for a while. And on a lark, I decided to put together a sort of project a report to see what it would be like to open a restaurant in San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
because there seemed to be a great shortage of at the time of small hotel spaces and stuff like that. So we had this idea to do like an Indian B&B with a restaurant
Restaurant.
attached to it and stuff. And so we did this thing. We went to the bank. We found a beautiful mansion, to like 20-room mansion. The owner loved the idea. Said, "I'll carry paper on the deal, whatever else." And it was all happening like tuck, 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 just right off the bat. And I started to panic.
Yeah.
I said, it's too easy, all this. And then I started to think that it's obviously very easy in the US to start a business, but there was a lot of trepidation about whether I'd be able to sustain it because of the competition and, all of that. And plus, I felt, I had been gone now for 10 years, and, I'm sort of not in that mindset anymore.
As in gone back from the US to
Back from
India.
the US, yeah, back to
Being away from the US,
being away, and so I wasn't sure, what the whole Indian food. I mean, not the Indian, but what the whole food scene was
Yeah.
all about there. And so we talked about it, and Malini and I decided that look, you go back. So she went back with Shan, and Shan's school was starting. I called up Michael Romano, the chef of Union Square Cafe, who's a friend,
Mhm.
and I said, I'm coming to New York. I need a job. And so I went to New York and we started working at Union Square Cafe. And what we said is we give ourselves till the end of March, till the end of the financial year. And if we don't find something in Bombay, we'll pack up and move to the US.
Hmm.
So I stayed back to sort of get back into that whole
Kitchen,
mindset,
yeah.
and back into this sort of American work ethic and the whole
Mhm.
restaurant work
Operation, yeah.
operation stuff like that. And she came back and was walking around looking for places with her checkbook in her bag, literally, and right place, right time. Again, Indigo came on the market.
So what was there before?
It was so Isa Sham, whose place it is, um, he had a restaurant there
No
called
way.
Vintage, which was which was a Hyderabadi food restaurant. He kind of did Audi food, and
Which he was running.
which he was running. And prior to that, it was a go down that was used to store antique furniture. Before that, I believe it was a Mahindra and Mahindra Chamari for their bachelor mid-level employees, managers, that kind of thing. And so it's gone through several avatars. And so she met Isa. This place came on, and they were able to shake hands on it. She wrote out a check, gave him an advance, whatever, called me and said, "Come home," and that was it.
Wow. I had no idea about this history.
And yeah, and I came home. And we started we started
Indigo.
Indigo. That's how it happened.
My God. And then what? It took you, what, 2 years almost?
Yeah,
to...
we had there were a lot of issues with the place. We had to redo the whole place basically.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with the location, it is a beautiful bungalow, but it is a very large bungalow, and I'm sure it came with all sorts of sort of structural issues. But what it was morphed into finally when the restaurant opened was
yeah,
just something else. And I have to tell you, Rahul, when we opened the cafe, and I remember Ashish Shah, who so little bit of history. Indigo has since now become a new restaurant, and when we opened the cafe next door, it was being renovated, and he came in and to congratulate us, and we had a coffee, and I just said that you've got balls touching that space, honestly,
Yeah.
and sort of all the sort of management aside, I was just like, that space is so much a part of people's you know adolescence, mine included, and I would really be scared to do anything to that. It's almost like something that just needs to be archived and just
Yeah,
left
yeah.
there.
I get that.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, we hear it from people even today, right? It's 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 something crazy, and I want to kind of deep dive a little bit into that and um how that happened. You've talked about these. So, Rahul, I mean, that level of iconic status is not easy to achieve. And you talked a little bit about this when you said you really wanted to create something special where that attention to detail, the fine food, was, the goal post. But let's break this down a little more. What does it really take, or what did it really take? And you've done restaurant after restaurant after restaurant since then. Um, have you? Do you feel that you've cracked it finally in terms of what it takes to create that level of?
I wish I could say yes. I mean, I wish I had this crystal ball that, I could just keep using over and over again, but it doesn't work that way. Um, I still, I think back to Indigo and what made it work and all that. I have no fucking idea. I don't think I can say
This
that.
is so funny because when people ask me, I'm like, it's exactly the same thing. I'm
No,
like,
I
how
can
does a
tell you.
restaurant work? And I'm like,
I,
it just does or it doesn't.
I can tell you, okay, so we
No.
were very
Yeah.
clear about a few things that everything we did was was about the food and the hospitality, right? So decisions that were made, whether to have music one night or to do or to do, it's all driven by we are a restaurant and what that means. And it's really funny because AD and I have always deferred opinions on this, and I like to say that I'm old fashioned and that I think people fundamentally go to restaurants to eat. And but today, if you ask me, maybe things are a little different, because now it's more vibe. It's now many things.
I mean, I don't think it's more vibe. I think vibe has always been important, and you guys did it so
We guys, yeah,
well.
we guys did it well.
I mean, that's the reason you, invest in a great architect, and you had Bijoy doing this space, Bijoy Jain, and there's a reason you picked him over maybe 10 other options you
Sure.
may have had, right? So it may not be something that's in your face, but it's very much a part of the
Yeah.
experience.
So as I was saying, so we were very clear about several things. Is that one, there was no compromise on food. There was no compromise on service. Um, Whatever decisions we had to make about the place was always driven by that, right? It was underscored by that, and um, we also were very clear that regardless of who came there to eat, they were all treated the same. A guest is a guest. Um,
I
but
mean, you've had presidents come and
yeah,
whatnot, so yeah.
I'll tell you a hilarious story. Um, but I'll come back to that. It's to do with Prime Minister Cameron.
Okay.
So, but and the other thing that we were very clear about is to be understated. Indigo was always very understated. We were never in your face. In fact, for years, we never even had a name board outside. There was just the logo of the leaf, the fish, and the
The
grain,
dish,
and
the
the
grain,
grain.
yeah.
Outside there was no name anywhere. And we always believed in, I think, letting what we did speak for itself and not anything else. We never advertised, we never marketed, we never did any of those things. Um, as to why it worked, again, I'll go back to say I think we were very lucky. There just was nothing else, and we were in the right place at the right time. I remember when we sort of opened the restaurant. I went through my 10, 12 days of soft opening and inviting people to eat. Camellia Punjabi, who of course is the grandmama
The doyen of
the doyen of all Taj Group F&B, right? She was there, and I came out of the kitchen to talk to my guests, and she goes, "Rahul, gutsy move, but will it work?" And I tell you, that gives you pause. Um, here is this person who's responsible and who built the entire F&B, if you will, of the Taj Group. And she's telling me, we've just spent 5 crores, by the way. Our project cost 5 crores.
What?
Yeah.
In
Indigo
90.
in 90.
Oh my God.
Okay. So it was, as I said, I mean, if like I were to get,
Oh my God. I'm having a heart attack right
if
now.
I were, so I could do all that because I didn't understand the significance of it. I didn't understand what it meant, the risk or any of this. I just, for me, it was no, this had to be done like this, and so it was done like this, right? At the time, the kitchen equipment that you got here in India was
You had to import.
very
Yeah.
rudimentary. My entire kitchen I imported. Okay, so I had garland stoves and all these things, and there was no question about it, right? I mean, it's what you needed to do a restaurant. We were completely system driven. So we had our material management, we had our inventory management, which even back then restaurants almost never did. Sort of
So
having
you went like the whole hog. There was no.
it was professionally,
Yeah.
it was completely professionally run. And then when wine became available, I was very clear that I wanted to have a really good list. And there was one point we had like 340 some labels on our list. We then did the whole Wine Spectator thing, and for 10 years straight we won the Wine Spectator Award of Excellence. We were the first restaurant in the country to get the Wine Spectator thing. And these things just kept happening, and we were the first for so many things.
Yeah.
But it's just because all our decision making was, no, it has to be about the food. It's got whatever events and stuff you did, it was always to do with food and beverage, right? So there was never like I remember we did a thing with a collaboration with Jitish Kalat, and it was to do with art on a plate and stuff. So Malini organized all these things with so he had his art up on the walls, and there was all the paintings had something to do with food, and then we translated or tried to translate that onto the plate. There was that was really interesting. We got a lot of good, traction out of that. We did supper theater several times at Indigo up on the terrace, where the dining, the diners actually were part of the play, and so there was all sorts of craziness. That
I mean, your
that we
Sunday
did.
brunch was iconic.
Sunday brunch was, yeah, it was great. We had we had amateur jazz nights on, I think, Tuesday or Thursday, whenever it was. Daniel Pearl used to play at Indigo all the time.
As in
Daniel Pearl, who
the journalist?
the journalist, yes.
What?
Yeah. He used to play at jazz nights all the time. I think he played the clarinet, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
In fact, when they were shooting the film, Brad Pitt and Angelina,
They came to. I remember they came to dine. I didn't know it was research.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
it was that. No, so I mean, there were a lot of, I don't know. It was just right place, right time, I think.
I mean, do you feel like when I'm listening to you, it sounds almost like you were fearless and you kind of just felt like I can do whatever I want, in the sense that what have I got to lose? I'm not talking financially, but if I do it to this standard, I can pretty much do anything and try it out,
Well, I think
as
when-
long as I do it well.
I think when you look back on it in hindsight, you can perhaps make statements like that. But yes, I think the way we operated was fearless. But I don't think any of it was conscious. To me, there was the only way to do it, and that was it. There was no compromise on that. I mean, I'll give you a classic story. In fact, today I was just talking about this with somebody. We were the first restaurant, I think, where genuinely, in the first 6 months, we had a 4-month waiting list to get to like get
A table reservation. Yeah.
to get a reservation. And this had nothing to do with, a lot of people say, initially if you call, they say, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
full,
yeah.
and you go there, the restaurant's empty. I don't believe in that. I've always believed that you're in the business of selling food. If you have a table and somebody calls, you damn well give them the
That's
table.
what I'm like. I'm like, why would you keep a table empty when
Exactly.
you can get a paying customer?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we had one night, it was a Saturday night, and Shah Rukh Khan and Naseeruddin Shah came in to eat. And I have the distinction of turning them away because I had no table. It was like, I'm sorry, I don't have a table for you. So these are the kind of cuckoo things that happened because, I mean, we really treated everyone
Equally.
equally, right? I mean, a paying customer is a paying customer. We slowly learned that, I used to hold a table till the start of service for the people who called at the last minute. And of course, you have to start
You
adapting.
evolve over. Yeah.
You slowly evolve. But I was very cut and dry prior to that. It was
We
like,
all know that.
this is the way it
Yeah.
goes, and this is the way it is. And like when I was telling you about Prime Minister Cameron, so he was here visiting. I mean, he was here on an official visit with, I think it was an economic summit or something, and he had a group of, I think, 8 people in his entourage, finance ministers and trade ministers and stuff. And in the afternoon, we get these MI6 or 5, I don't know, guys come to Indigo and say, Prime Minister Cameron wants to eat here tonight. And it's like, whoa, just completely out of the blue, huh? And so we said, okay. So they came, they checked out the place, and they said he wants to sit up here on the roof. And I said, but it's all open. He said, yeah, he wants to be treated like any guest. He doesn't want anything special. Just hold this table for him. We will be at the table next, and there's another table for all the aides, for all the aide that comes. So he comes, greeted. He walked from the Taj to Indigo. Of course,
That's a first, and also that's probably
security-
not going to happen now.
security went apeshit.
Yeah.
I mean, there was just they didn't know what to do. So of course, everything was closed down. The roads are closed down. It's complete knee jerk. So he comes in. I greet him. Whatever. We take him up to the terrace. He's seated. We give him a normal menu. We had some. No, I'm not going to say it.
No, you have to now.
No, I
you
can't.
have to.
You have to read it in my book. No. So anyway, so of course he places his order, or I actually took his order. Whatever else, you come in the kitchen. Food goes out. After the first course goes out, this MI5 agent comes down. I don't know. As
Whatever.
I said, whatever comes down. She's this Rastafari with dreadlocks, packing an Uzi, and she comes down and she goes, "Hey man, what you doing, man?" I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You can't serve the PM first." So I said, "Why?" She
Oh,
said,
you're a taste tester.
"No." So I said, "Why? He's the PM." She goes, "Man, you have to feed us first." So I said, "Why?" She goes, "Because when he is finished and gets up and goes, we have to go too. I want to have my dinner." So
That is hilarious.
in
Who
the
cares
middle-
about if he might die? So
yeah. So in the middle, for me it was like, yeah, it makes sense,
it
and
does actually.
and so in the middle of service on a Friday or Saturday night when he was there, restaurant was packed, right? Middle of service, we had to switch the order of service from his table to the Secret Service table and the aides table and then the PM. And in all this, the food got delayed,
Oh.
right? And they had to wait an extra 20 minutes because the kitchen got backed up. I mean,
Yeah.
we were in the shed. And so our manager was on the terrace walking past, and Prime Minister Cameron goes, "Excuse me," he said, "Will our food be a while? It's like been a while." And in true Indigo fashion, very understated, Our manager says, I'm terribly sorry, sir, but the kitchen's a little backed up right now, but your food will be out momentarily. That's it. End of, end of story. This is the Prime Minister
Yeah.
of England, right? So,
It is what it is. No, I mean that I'm sure you've got a truckload of similar stories,
yeah.
and we
No,
could, yeah.
there's so many things happened, in that place. I remember in towards the end, I got this email from this couple in New York, who's this is around July, August or so. Said we're coming to Bombay in the end of the year. We'd like a table for four, or Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve or whatever it was. And said also in there that we were backpackers in India 10 years ago or 15 years 10 yeah, it was 10 years ago, and the last night when we left India, I proposed to her at Indigo,
Wow.
and we're coming to celebrate our 10th anniversary with our two children. So I mean, it was such a beautiful
Yeah.
thing. I mean, they came. I cooked for them personally. And when it came time to pay and we wined and dined them.
Mm.
And when it came time to pay the bill, I comped the entire meal.
Yeah.
And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "You've come all the way from New York. How can I charge you for this meal?
Yeah.
It's just, I'm touched." So these were the kind of things that just one thing after the other. And I think it comes from right practice.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds hokey in a way, but it's correctness of, I think, what you do. It's like a very Zen thing, isn't it? I
Is
mean,
it is it about being true to yourself and what you set out to do in a way?
yeah, absolutely, and uncompromisingly so.
Yeah.
Like we were historic. I mean, it was crazy. People who would, let's say, make a reservation at, we had to do our two sittings. So people who made a reservation for the second sitting, if when they came, if they couldn't get their table in 20 minutes of them coming in or half an hour of them coming in after they've had a drink at the bar or whatever, very often we comp the
Company,
meal.
yeah.
It's just because for me it was, I'm entering into a contract with you.
Mhm.
Your job
Is to show up and
is to
then
show up and pay the bill. That is your contract. My part is everything else, and if I fail at any of that, I can't charge you. And so we were very, very, very clear about all these things.
Would you do the same today?
No,
Yeah.
I think the diner has changed today also. You know, um, I don't think the whole industry is the same anymore. There's That's like another conversation.
No, it's this conversation. Well, I mean, look, you had the restaurant for till 2015.
I sold out and yeah, early 15, end of 14.
So
we
about
started.
17 years.
Yeah.
And then, since then, and obviously while you had Indigo Delis and you had Neil and Tote and, all of that. But once you exited Indigo, then, a few years later, you went on to Open Qualia. And so you've seen the industry for over 2.5 decades. Tell us about that diner. How has that diner changed, if at all? And, what do you kind of attribute that to? Or how do you feel? I mean, I know talking about the industry at large is a whole different, like you said, conversation. But what has changed? Like, what have you noticed? I mean, you've been in it.
Well, I think people are certainly have a lot more liquidity. People are a lot more traveled, exposed, adventurous. And so, when back in the day, someone would perhaps say, your cream sauce is broken on a pasta. And I'd say, no, it's made from ricotta, so it's going to be a little coarse. Or, people would say, I like it or I don't like it, but I can't tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
Today they can, you got too much time in it, or it's too caramelized, or something or the other, right? That's one. I find, and I'm, I'm going to get hammered for saying this, but I think two things have to change. One is there's on some level there's too much mediocrity in this business. I think you know there are too many what I call YouTube chefs, kids who've worked for 2 years and I'm a chef,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. You have to you have to put in your dues. As cliched as it sounds, I'm sorry, but
But
this is
explain why. I mean,
I'll tell you,
yeah.
it's a people management business. It's a perception management business. You are managing taste, okay, and these are purely subjective things,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to, like any service industry, right? You need to spend time going through different situations, meeting different people, and their idiosyncrasies, and understanding people, and what makes them tick, and what makes them appreciate some types of food and not others, or some kind of music or some kind of service, and whatever. It's it's like, why do you go to a senior surgeon? Because he's had experience. He's done 300 whatever appendicitis,
Mm-hmm.
appendix operation.
Operations, yeah.
Yeah, appendix operations, right? I mean, I would rather go to somebody like that who's
Sure.
dealt with all kinds than somebody who's 2 years out of med
Medical
school,
school, yeah.
right? It's the same thing. I
Mm-hmm.
think being a chef, um, I know that, for example, my taste buds, my likes, and the way I cook um, has completely evolved over the years, right? When I first started off in the States and stuff, I didn't know what I was doing. I was jumping from one restaurant to the other, so I got exposure in Italian. I got some exposure in really good Mexican food, in Spanish, in many different cuisines, modern American, whatever that means. A bunch of different stuff. So I'm a good generalist. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like jack of all trades, right? Master of none. But now, over the years, I've finally learned to embrace my Indianness also, right? So I play with flavors, and I started that at Indigo,
Mm-hmm.
where I'll take some of my dad's side of the family Maharashtrian recipes and play a little bit with it, with my Western sensibility, if you
Mm-hmm.
will, or the cooking technique and plating and stuff like that. So whether I sort of westernize Indian or Indian is Western, I don't know. But I enjoy doing that because growing up, my mom's American. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom's American, my dad's Indian. And so food at home was always all over the place. We may have an Indian meal at lunch, and then at night would be Western. But if there were leftovers from things, we'd be eating sola chikadi with with I don't know,
Pasta
like
or
a
something,
grilled
yeah.
fish.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
Whatever, yeah.
I'm just saying that
Yeah.
that so my taste buds are
Yeah.
all over the place, and everything sits right in the mouth, right? And that to me is the only criteria. Is that if it works in the mouth, then it's something worth
Absolutely.
eating or worth playing with. Um, so I lost my train of thought.
Continue. It's still keeping me wrapped. No, I mean, we were talking about how things have changed, and for
Yeah.
chefs
Okay.
who
Sorry.
need to,
Yeah. So
yeah.
so so for all these reasons, and that's right. Sorry. Thank you for reeling me
Someone's
back
listening
in.
at least.
Thank you. Thank you for reeling me back in. No. So it's very important that you go through all this
Mm.
experience so that you develop a language of your own and
Identity.
and
Yeah.
a vocabulary of your own. It's, I think, like a painter or an artist or whatever. As you grow older, you develop a style
Mm-hmm.
that is inherently you, and I think that is much more interesting than if you are just like any other cook doing edamame dumplings and truffle fries and that kind of thing. I think it's important to spend a little time both working, also if you can, traveling and eating. It's important to try things.
Yeah, I agree about the traveling and being exposed and just being exposed, I
Yeah.
think, is the key thing. But I mean, with you had Indigo, and then you had Indigo Delhi, which was this sort of casual, more comfort, and your sort of familiar, just food in a blanket kind of feeling. And that was a very different approach to the fine dining part of it. So, and then you went into sort of also Indian when you had Neil. So, I mean, that's quite a digression from where you started. How did you navigate that? You know, um, I guess those different paths in a way.
Trial and error. They say when you have one restaurant, to open the next one is the most difficult thing. It's very true.
I can vouch for that.
It gets easier as you open more, because you then have a team and you can transplant people from one place to the other to help the other
Hmm.
place settle in and things like that. But it was to go from Indigo to Indigo Delhi was a big step, but it was an easier step because Indigo was all about, it was very chef driven.
Hmm.
Okay, and we had specials every day. Our fish supplier would call up and say, "Aaj ye aa gaya, to theek
Hmm.
hai, de do,"
Page though,
and
yeah.
yeah, bhej do, and we'd cook something with it, right? So we took advantage of what was coming in, variations in ingredient prices, market, all that stuff. And Indigo Delhi, there was at the time, to me, there was no place that did a decent sandwich, and I was craving that.
Your
And
Reuben sandwich
yeah,
will be.
it was amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, the thing curing for
And the
like
pizza, oh
21.
God,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that pizza was actually Chef JD's creation.
Mm.
So credit where it's due.
I mean, I have been through this with moving from the table and opening Misty. The pressure of following a successful restaurant is huge. Did you ever feel that? I mean, maybe it was different
Are you talking
now.
about are you talking about doing the second or the third
Yeah,
one? Is that
like as
is
in
that
that.
you have this as a
No, that
legacy, and
you've
so
done this. Can you do this again?
it's tough.
Yeah.
It's very tough. I mean, when so doing Indigo Delhi, opening multiple delis, or doing Neil, I didn't feel any of that. It was still the same company, even though the concept was different. Like Neil was completely
Yeah.
different, but it was different. So for me, it was fresh, and it was interesting because it was Indian food, Audi food. So in my mind, I guess it wasn't impinging, if you will,
Sure.
on what we were already doing.
Yeah.
So it was like a brand new. It was a foray into something absolutely
Yeah.
new, and for the first time, where the kitchen was under someone else's control.
Mm.
I knew nothing about the food, other than what I used to taste and say I liked or I didn't like, and we'd play with that and that kind of thing. But it's the first time that I was really dependent on someone else
Hmm.
in the kitchen, um, and so yeah, I don't know.
No, but okay. So maybe then when you were opening Qualia, did you feel that?
Qualia was, yeah. So again, Qualia, I was very, now the food we did at Qualia is completely different to what we did with Indigo, or what we were doing
Hmm.
with Indigo. I think Indigo also towards the end, it just became it's it was it was just starting to drag at,
Hmm.
at some point, and I went through different. We like went through different
Hmm.
investors. Things turned sour at the end. It wasn't a very pleasant experience when we came to the end. But it was time to move on. And so Qualia we did. It was completely fresh. And yeah, it's you. I question myself all the time. I'm inherently a very insecure person.
So you feel like what, imposter syndrome in a way?
Yeah, to I don't know if it's imposter syndrome, but I certainly, I I I question myself a lot. It's like, do I have the ability to do this? Am I relevant? Is what I do relevant? Is it what people want? Do I have a pulse on the market? Do I have, because today I think it's not really, you know classical food anymore. It's not all that. I think there are too many moving parts today in this business. At least it is here. I still feel when you travel, there is a greater food focus in restaurants. But I find in this country right now, I think we're still going through our uh, development phase, if you will. What the US went through in the 80s and 90s over a 2 year period, over a 10-year, 20-year
Mm-hmm.
period, where they started from nouvelle cuisine and then finally wound up to where they were. Our growth or development of the whole F&B scene in this country has been kind of interesting because I think people, you know, picked up mature concepts and mature
Mm.
businesses from overseas and brought them here.
And you feel the palette
Whereas,
wasn't ready, maybe.
yeah, I think the jumps were very
Big.
big and also in some level sort of all over the place, right? It's like somebody sees a great pub in England and says, okay, I'm going to bring it to India, but it's not part of our
Mm.
culture, right?
Mm.
So I mean, in going to a pub and drinking a pint of beer and having
Leaving work at
fish and
five
chips.
o'clock and then
It's
going
not.
and having a
It's
beer
not
or
part
something.
of our
Yeah.
culture. So
Yeah.
pubs fail here generally, right? Um, uh, so I think it's important that we as an industry grow. You know, two things have to happen. That the players in the industry, the practitioners,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your service staff, your cooks, your restaurateurs, all of that. So that grows, they evolve. At the same time, even your diner has to evolve along with it. Today, the average Indian, I mean, not the average Indian, but I'm saying people, we go abroad, we'll drop 300 pounds on a meal without batting an eyelid, come back and brag about where you ate and everything else and what a great meal it was. But we'll bitch about spending, $1,200 on a imported
Steak.
steak or something like that here. It doesn't work. I mean, you want the same quality of experience. You want the same, ingredients. You want the same hospitality. You want everything that you had there, but you're not willing to pay for it here. I don't know what happens the minute you pass through immigration here and you come back. It's like all of a sudden,
It's a
everything.
split
Yeah,
personality.
yeah, everything is all of a sudden, I'm at home now. Everything has to be paisa vasool and then some. It's just it it all has to grow together. Okay,
I,
it's
I feel that I mean, we've been through the same thing, the same journey in terms of, dealing with the customer that complains about paying
yeah,
here, like you just said. But I do feel that it's also up to us,
to
as
educate.
not to educate, but more to stand by your guns. And, if you feel that something has to be priced at a certain price point because of whether it's inflation or whether that's the
Yeah.
best quality ingredient, and if you do what you do well and that's the price,
So
then, you know, um,
I
take it or
said
leave it.
I
Yeah.
said earlier on that in some way, it's what I meant when I said we're driven today by mediocrity
Yeah.
is in a way what it means is that people copy you a lot. And if like I'm doing a, let's say, a burger for which I sell for 800-900 bucks. Why? Because it's cooked the way it is. It's the ingredients. It's olive oil, whatever it is. Somebody else does a burger for 400 bucks. Okay, call it the same thing. But I think until your dining clientele eats 20 bad burgers, they'll not really appreciate and understand why the difference between, let's say, what you do and what someone else is doing. This growth, this exposure has to take place. This time has to
Do you still
happen.
feel that the diner isn't discerning enough today?
It's a I wouldn't say the diner is not discerning, but I don't know what's important to the diner.
Value over quality or price over.
Yeah, I think
I actually feel it comes down to value actually, so whether you eat a 20 rupee vada pav, and there's a whole range of vada pavs
sure,
out there, or
sure.
you eat a 900 rupee burger, or I think it's about value, right? And
Perception.
that's what
It's the perceived value of what you're
exactly,
eating.
and it is relative. I mean, some people may not feel it's worth paying for. It is relative, but I think coming back to the way I think about it as a restaurateur and not a chef at all. So I don't have that sort of creative um, uh, opinion on what I'm creating. I'm looking at it as a business. It really is about creating, doing something that you perceive value in, and hoping there are others who think like you. And
But to do that, you need to have some staying power today. I mean, I think
so you think that it
I think
doesn't
your business life cycles have
change?
drastically changed. We were Indigo. We had, I would say, 10 years. If you look at our sales figures, it's just
Yeah.
up and up. It was like you said. It's like whatever we chose to do worked, right? Or we just had the confidence that it would. I don't think it today works the same way.
But is that also because when you had Indigo, I mean, there were far and few between fine dining restaurants out there,
Yeah.
right? And today it's a different situation.
It's a much tougher
so
environment.
what is
today.
it that, what do you think that staying power
So I like
comes
to,
down to?
So I still feel like we've now gone through a lot of mid-segment dining. I think now en masse, I think people are looking for a step up,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what I meant by this growth has to happen, right? I mean, um, after a few years, that step up will become commonplace, and people will look for a step up,
Right.
or look for something different. So so that evolution is taking place right now, and to me, it's a very interesting time. One is we had the frustration of being locked up for 2 years during COVID. So there's all, I guess, what people call revenge dining, right?
I mean, but it's been almost a year. I mean, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, people are going out,
Yeah.
people are partying hard, people are eating, people are doing stuff. So I like to hope that there's a large enough market out there that people still appreciate a good meal, still appreciate or have the ability to recognize what you're doing or the effort that you've put into what you're doing. Um,
So you
so
think that staying power comes from having enough diners out there who like what you do?
I think so.
I mean, if you think about
Or you need to have that little bit of time to educate people, right? This is what I do. It might take a little while for people to come around, especially if you're taking a big step forward in your food, and like people are not used to the flavors
Right.
and what you're doing, because it's not familiar, it's not commonplace, right? And so people are curious about it, and until such time as you find your own level, so to speak, it like takes a while, right? For like people to come around and say, okay, I wasn't sure at first, but I actually like what you're doing. So
Yeah.
it takes a little time.
I think that time is something that maybe, I mean, I know from our experience at Misty, which is our restaurant that we closed 15 months after we opened it. You get one shot at it, is what I feel.
Yeah.
That was my learning. And you don't have that luxury of time to win people over. And I don't know if this is something about Bombay, or it's
I think it's all
anywhere,
over.
all over, that word spreads like wildfire, and it's something that you kind of have to get people in.
You just raised a very interesting point. I mean, the fact that you really get one chance at it, right? You get one shot at it, and that's very true. And I think the sad thing about that is that because that underscores everything you're doing, it's do you have the balls to take a step, right? It's like
Well, exactly. So
do you have the or do you want to be safe and do what everyone else is doing in a little fancier place and
Mhm.
whatever. So that has to change.
Mm.
It's got to change. So so that's kind of what I meant by saying you need some staying power,
Yeah.
right? Is that there are there are a handful of chefs today in this country who are at the vanguard of change. All the young guys, and they're doing great guns. They're doing great things with their food and their restaurants, and they have to take these steps, because the steps that they take then have the sort of trickle down effect after. The people who work with them are seeing things going differently. When as a group they move forward, if you will, it takes your dining public
Hmm.
with you. So it has that whole uh,
Ripple effect.
ripple effect or domino effect or whatever it is, and that has to happen.
But it does need you to take that first
Yeah,
step. And I think that's also where you might, this business is a very expensive business to get
yeah,
into. And I understand where sometimes, it's easier to play it safe than to, have that courage, maybe, especially if it's your first restaurant. And you're operating in an environment like today where every week there's a new restaurant opening in
sure.
the city. So it is a very it's a tricky one. It's not something that I uh, take lightly. That you may not want to be too out there in your
Yeah,
um,
again,
concept and your
sure, sure, absolutely.
and until you have that confidence and you build that repertoire in a way, and then you start experimenting a little
Everybody,
more.
it's like everybody is giving me advice all the time that you need certain percentage of your menu to be familiar, to be, something that people
Is it true?
accept. Oh God, I don't know. I,
If
I,
you don't know after all these
ah,
years, what hope is there for us?
oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I think no, it's
Listen, there are a
true.
lot, a lot of very successful restaurateurs out there. So
No, but I mean, it's years and years and years of experience where maybe that is true. Like maybe someone just wants to have something
familiar.
familiar and comforting,
Eh,
and there's nothing wrong with that
Not
at
at
all.
all,
Yeah,
not at all.
and
But
just do it well. I
but
mean,
how
that's
but how many different ways can you do the same food? I mean, what I'm trying to say is that there has to be some growth somewhere. There has
sure.
to be some diversity. There has to be, some something else to look forward to when you go out to eat.
Fair. One of my biggest challenges in this business, and I think that gives me somewhat sort of sleepless nights still, is what I think drives the business, which is people. Right? I really do feel that it's the people that make our restaurants uh, to a very large extent.
Of course.
And I still see that as the biggest challenge for the industry, and not just me personally today, especially after COVID, where a lot of people have possibly left the industry and found a maybe safer you know route forward, and that's definitely had an impact, I think, on the restaurant business at large. What is sort of your view on um dealing with this challenge?
Yeah, there's a huge shortage of, trained, experienced people. Um, you just have to have the ability to hire um, for for their attitude, and then try and just get people to like for example, when we did Under the Over back in the day, I had kids from St. Xavier's college working in my kitchens. Okay, they learned to make pizza and stuff, and we had a great fun time with them. For like them, it was an opportunity to earn some money on the side and get free food, and
Kind of like how you were doing when you were
when I
trying
was in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So, there are people out there who are looking for jobs. Yes, of course. You have to try and be clever. I think in who you hire. Yes, you may need some people from the industry, but sometimes they come with their own baggage, right? They have their own way of doing things that they've been doing for donkey's years, and it's not maybe the way you want to operate today.
How do you deal with that?
A stick. No. No,
You're revealing
I'm
your
being,
age now.
I'm being silly. Now, yeah, you have to be patient. You have to have a lot of patience. I mean, I remember back in the day when we were doing Indigo, and to get that international level of service and everything else, it was a huge. It was a Herculean effort to train people, and not only to train people, but it was you had to get them thinking like an owner. And the big thing was teaching the difference between subservience and service, right? We come from huge feudal backgrounds in this country, and this people talk down to waiters and more menial staff, if you will, that way, and to try and overcome that, and to try and get your people to realize that there's no difference between you and them and your customer and your waiter and whatever, that everyone is a human being, and that you all have the same feelings, and you have the same aspirations in life, and the opportunities may be different, but otherwise people are inherently the same. And it's okay to say no to a guest. It's like okay to laugh with them. It's okay to joke with them. So that those fine lines about when is it too much, or when is it. So all of this thing has to happen, and you have to. I think it's a way you as an owner also approach your business, is that you lead by example, right? And this is a business where they always say you need to have a face of the business. So if you're a restaurant owner, you need to be there. All the classic restaurants in the world, all the really successful restaurants in the world are built around people, the face of the place. Yeah, eventually you may open 10 outlets, and you have to travel all over the place, and you have to clone yourself and morph yourself into other things. But you still inherently need to have that. And when you set that, when you as an owner, or as the head chef or whatever, if you have a personality, your restaurant sort of
Absorbs
absorbs that personality, provided you are transmitting that and sharing it with all your people.
And it's genuine. I think it cannot be something that is trying to copy someone else. It has to be
Yeah.
you, true.
Like, I mean, I tell my waiters, you know, even though we're doing Western food, if you want to describe the dish to a guest, and you've tasted it 20 times and you have an opinion, but are not able to communicate it eloquently, whatever, in English, but you can do it in Hindi, do it, because it's about communication, right? It's about explaining what something is. It's got nothing to do with nothing to do with anything else. So I want that interaction. I want them to be comfortable, to talk to a guest, to just as they would talk to their own friends. They don't have to be yes sir, no sir, three bags full sir. I mean, I hate that.
Yeah, I think it's important though for someone like you, trying to train your team to be that way, for the diner to evolve in parallel, and
Yeah, for
appreciate
sure.
that is the way now, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I think we're still a little way away from
Yeah,
that.
we
but
are. You're
yeah,
right.
but I
But
agree.
you have to move in that direction.
Yeah, and I think what's important is for the team to, you said, think like an owner. That's absolutely true. But also to believe in what you're doing, right? If they don't, and it becomes kind of clinical, and I think that comes across very quickly to anyone experiencing it.
Sure.
So, and that is hard to do. But it's so important that people, are there for the right reasons in
It's
this business.
in a way, it's a bit like social media, right? I mean, people who have very successful with social media have a team behind them, right? And my first question to all that is, whatever you put out there, is it your voice? And that's the hardest thing, right? I mean, it's like easy to get people to do your social media for you, but if they're not speaking in your voice, then there's always that disconnect between what you're putting out there for the world to see and what you're really trying to do, right?
I,
So,
I couldn't agree more. Tell me some of the things. I mean, you touched on, for example, dealing with investors. Tell me some of the things that you have learned which you might do differently. And I mean, look, I've dealt with investors as well, and it's been a big learning curve. But what, maybe about them or anything else that you knew that you didn't want to do the same way the second time round?
huh. Um, it's a tough one. I mean, people invest in restaurants for many different reasons. There are those who want to do it because they think it's a sexy business and they want to, I'm a restaurant owner, right? And you entertain and you do all that stuff. It is, it is a business, but it's the dynamics of, I think, restauranting are a lot different than other businesses. It's very sensitive to to very many
Hmm.
things. There are too many moving parts. I think for restaurants, for investors in this business, you have to have a long term view.
Quick
You
returns.
don't get quick returns. It's a it's a people management business. Your things. It's as I said, there are just too many moving parts. So it's very important that you align yourself with investors who understand these things and who, again, will allow you to work your craft, right? And not sort of interfere in every step of the way to prevent you from evolving a process, right? So it's a very tough business. You can't while you sort of need to look at metrics, on an Excel spreadsheet, you at the same time also need to, you need to be understanding, and you need to sort of handle the unmeasurable or the
Hmm.
non-measurable skills, the soft skills, right? In how do you make people come back?
Yeah. The relationship.
The
Yeah.
relationship, yeah, and, that whole emotional quotient that exists between your diner and the restaurant, whether it's food, whether it's the
It's not
service.
necessarily measurable and
It's not. It's
quantifiable.
not.
Yeah.
It's not. And so that's the hard part. Uh, you can't always write up a concept and say, here's my deck and here's my proposal and this is my concept. There are some things which just evolve.
Hmm.
It's a very touchy feely business, and you can't always quantify that.
I think in the kind of restaurants that we do, it needs to be people who are uh, coming along for the ride in a way, and not looking at it purely as return on
Sure.
investment. And not because you don't think there will be a return on investment, but because that's not the primary. That's not the
Driver.
primary
It's not the
driver for everything, right?
So I mean, I can use Indigo as an example. Now, you can argue that again, it's when it was there were very few other restaurants, etc. But I think it's we never. I mean, we based decisions, business decisions also, on what was right for restauranting, what was right for the customer, what was right for the food we were producing, what was right for our staff, all of that. And I think it's like, in a way, it's sort of like a vastu of business, that if you're working with the right practice, the success and
Will
money
follow.
should come on its own, right? But don't make that as your driving force. Like, I'll tell you, when I he separated from my partners in Indigo, and I was talking to I was talking to my senior partner at the time, and we were talking about hospitality. And he turned to me and he said, "यार, hospitality की मारो गोली, पहले पैसे बनाओ, बाद में hospitality देखते हैं." And I said, it doesn't work that way. It's what drives the business. It's what makes the money. You can manage it however you want afterwards, but the money, that is. But to make it, it's all soft skills.
Yeah. And also, I think that the alignment and how long it's going to take to make that money
Sure.
is important. So it's definitely not a quick buck, for sure. But then, having said that, there's so many. I mean, the amount of private equity that I see getting into this industry now is just absurd. Valuations are just. I have no idea what's going on. And people ask me all the time, what do you think about this valuation and this investment? And I don't quite know how this fits into what we're talking about, which is that that is very much a business plan, scale driven business. Is that just something that works for a different format of restaurant, and there is room for that, or do you feel that
I
you
think
come
that-
back to first principles?
I think there's room for everything. For this industry to grow, you're going to have, like casual restaurants, which will occupy the majority of the dining space. You will eventually have fine dining. You will eventually have individual kind of, owner-driven, individual personality-driven restaurants. I think there's room for all of that. I think the economics of and the model of each of those businesses is quite different. And I think the learnings that we all took away during COVID, when all the deliveries and all the cloud kitchens and all of that started, I think was a perfect example. Case in point is that we learned really what it was to operate these dark kitchens or these cloud kitchens or whatever you call them, right? And so those economics are entirely different than the delivery economics are entirely different than
A fine dining restaurant,
running
yeah.
a fine dining or doing a quick service restaurant, like a chain of stuff, and so all those things are different. But
So-
at the end of the day, they are also quite the same. In other words, it's the same parameters that you're always trying to manage.
Fair. I mean, I think it isn't one size fits all, but I do feel that restaurants like ours, are a slower growth game than maybe the ones that are more scalable.
Sure.
Why do you think you've spent time in New York? Why do you think India doesn't have a New York Times level of food critique?
That is a very good question. So, oh boy, that I think.
I'm not trying to get you into trouble. I'm
No,
genuinely.
no. There are a couple of people here who understand food, whose values, whose judgment I respect. But I think until such time, but unfortunately, food critiquing is, now with social media, everybody's a critic, right? So
Well, that's everywhere. So I mean, I think that social media is all over the world, and there is that with. But just in terms of like, you know, understanding of food and being able to translate that onto a
Well,
written word.
perhaps it's to do with the ability for that to be a worthwhile occupation, right? I mean, you have your big heavyweight food critics in the West are paid for. All their experiences are paid for by their paper or their
Sure.
or whether it's a paper or a TV station or whatever it is. So they're allowed to do things. And they evolve into those positions because they know what they're talking about, right? I mean, these are people who understand food, who understand wine, who understand the whole industry. And and unfortunately here it's like a low man on the totem pole is
Sent out to do
given
the
the food beat, so to speak, or the restaurant beat, and go out. And these are people who have no experience, who have no exposure, and they're trying to comment on what you're doing. They don't even understand what you're doing.
Mhm.
So how is that ever going to? How is that ever going
But
to?
do you feel that people are not sort of aren't open about uh, what they think? I mean, that you don't really get honest opinions out there because there's this
Absolutely.
sort of let's keep the peace and let's keep everyone happy kind of thing. I mean, that's
Well, you have that. It's also like, I mean, it's a classic thing. I actually back in the day at Indigo, Morparia, the
cartoonist. Yeah.
cartoonist, did I knew I had arrived when he did a cartoon on me
Are you
and
serious?
Indigo, yeah. And basically what transpired is that we'd get calls all the time from food writers, food critics, and say, we'd like to review your restaurant. And I'd say, sure, go ahead. And so they're like, when should we come? And I
Whenever you
said,
want to come.
I don't want to know. They said, no, you don't understand. I said, yes, I understand. It's like, when should we come to review? I said, you want me to invite you, you want me to wine you and dine you, you want me to pick up your bill, and then you write anything, then you write what I tell you to write and all that. I said, it doesn't work that way. As a critic, you make a reservation like anyone else, you come in unannounced, you eat like anyone else, you order off the menu like anyone else, you pay your bill like anyone else, and then you write what you want.
Hmm.
They could never understand that, right? And
So the reason I always heard that can't happen is because the publications aren't going to pay the bills. Who's going to foot the bill?
well, it's exactly what I
Yeah.
just said. Is that if you're going to make it a serious occupation or a serious vocation, then
Make that investment.
then all that has to follow, right? Otherwise, don't just do it. I mean, it just gives a junior reporter a chance to have a free meal.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't serve any purpose.
I think the food critique has to catch up with what's happening in the industry and take it a little more seriously maybe
Yeah.
than it has.
I think our diners have to first take what we're doing a little more seriously.
Yeah.
about-
No,
about
everything
food.
kind of has to come together, and that's the only way where we're gonna evolve from where we are.
Sure.
Um okay, you've been at it more than 25 years now. You ready to retire, or can we expect more from Chef Rahul's kitchen?
Well, I'm in the process of building one now.
Oh my god, this is
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
And are you crazy? I have to ask.
Yeah, it's the Marquis de Sade school of life. It's,
We were talking about this where I mean either you're like seriously sadistic or and just it's like what we were talking about, right? That it's like pregnancy where you forget what you went through and then you're like,
Then you
oh,
have
I
another
want
baby.
to have another baby,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And then you're like, oh, now I remember.
Yeah.
So
No, look, it's all I know. I need to keep busy. So yeah, I won't stop. I I love this industry. I really love. I love when people say, "Thanks, Rahul. That was a great meal." I mean, I live for that.
yeah,
And so I don't want to. To me, it's not work. Yes, I'm busy and I'm trying to control all those moving parts and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's for that I work. Yeah, if you can make some money along the way, it's great.
I think that's just that's incredible to hear that you still have it in you to put one more out there. Are you gonna tell us any more, or is that a secret?
No,
When the time is right.
when the time is right.
I have a very funny story. Can I say it? Hi, I'm Shweta. I'm Navya's mother.
Hi, I'm Shweta. I'm Navya's mother.
I am Navya's nanny. My name is Jaya Bachchan.
I got nothing over here, guys.
It's a big day for me. Okay, start. What the hell?
I was saying something very nice and empowering and you just interrupted me.
Don't complain. Don't explain. Never explain.
Let me say it.
I have my little secrets. Hello, madam. How are you? I got your number. I told you don't get me started. Mom. When you want to do money pinching, you're also very good. I've seen you. I've noticed. I finished these many books. You're still on your first book. I finished so many books. I'm like, what the hell?
Leave me alone.
Definition of love has changed today. I'm too old for all this. Navya, there's a wonderful lake. Go and jump into it. And drown. And she does.
Oh my God. Stop.
What are you saying?
What the hell? It's important to have friends.
My best friends have been Navya and Shweta.
Aww. I have a problem saying no.
You better learn. It's the
best word.
Oh my God.
Okay.
What the hell, Navya?
What the hell, Navya? You're saying this podcast is called What the Hell, Navya? I have at least 3 What the Hell, Navya episodes in a day.
We've entered the last segment of the show, which is just fun, rapid fire. So is
boy.
it like still or sparkling? I'm just kidding.
Sparkling.
Restaurant awards, yay or nay?
Oh boy, they're needed, but they need to change. So, yeah. I don't know.
Plant-based meats, bad fad or here to stay?
I think they're here to stay. I think they will evolve. I think if we're going to survive as a species long term, we're probably going to have to. I mean, these are very lofty statements, but I think there is going to have to be a shift in the way we approach.
I mean, I get in the
farming and
West,
everything else.
but India, you think?
It'll come.
Yeah.
It'll come. Sure, it'll come eventually. We have to feed people and animal animal farming is not sustainable in the way that we're going. So it will happen.
Gluten-free, vegan or Jain, the one you most prefer to cook for?
Christ, it's like the old adage about I'm lactose intolerant, I'm wheat, I'm gluten intolerant, I'm all these things.
Hospitality,
Vegan.
Rahul, hospitality.
Vegan, what should I get? And the answer is a taxi, right? Get out of here, go home. Who do I like cooking for? Everyone.
Yeah.
I don't have a thing. I mean, if you have,
I'm joking. That was.
I know you are.
While I have you in the hot seat, I'm going to take full advantage.
Go for it.
Okay, favorite food city in India and the rest of the world?
Oh, in India, Bombay. No question.
You're a proper Mumbaikar.
Mumbai, full on, yeah. Rest of the world, I don't know. I mean, I know New York well, so I love restaurants in New York. But I mean, there are great restaurants all
Anywhere
over the
you've
world.
traveled recently and had a great meal, or
I haven't traveled in
been
a while. I haven't traveled in a
Fair,
while,
fair.
so
Fair. A bucket list restaurant that you're yet to make it to.
Oh God, any restaurant. I've never been to Japan, so
I know. Oh my God.
So I'm ready to go there
I'm
and
ready to go there too.
try it all.
I know. That is definitely one which is very, very high up on the list.
Rahul dreams of sushi.
Yes. Any final words of advice for budding chefs or restaurateurs? I know you've shared a lot in this conversation, but any last words?
Well, the only thing I'm going to say is that you have to really love this love this profession. Else just don't do it.
Wise words. Thank you so much for
Thank
being on
you.
the show. This was so much fun, and yeah, can't wait to hear more about what's
You will.
coming up.
You will. Thanks for having me on this. It was fun.